Ralph Gibson, Syntax, published around 1983. Hardback, dust cover, picked up from a library sale, which is part of Sunderland Polytechnic, which I got many years ago. It was done on his Lustrum publishing company, which he set up, Lustrum Press, and I think that was in New York. And I think he set that up to continue his fascination with printed books and to have a full control on the output of his books. Ralph was born about 1939. I think his sort of seminal piece, his book which really landed him, was a book called Here's a List Here, was the Somnambulist, which was in 1970, then Deja Vu, 72, Days at Sea, 74. Interesting guy, Ralph. He was the assistant he was Robert Frank's assistant, and I think Dorothea Lange as well in about the 60s, and with Robert Frank in the late 60s. He was a really interesting guy. I like this book. It deals with the design. It deals with, definitely obviously deals with composition, but his images are quite erotic in parts. They remind me of like a hard sort of film noir style with like crisp shadows and like intense lights and high and low key sort of separation in his shots. It's very difficult. In my head, I can describe his work. I'm going to try to just sort of pick up on some of it. I wanted you to see his work. I think if you go onto his website, which I'll put a link in the information box, I actually really like his work. His work, if you're studying design elements and you're looking at how light works, how shadows work, how form and light work together, everything from lines, shapes, patterns, texture, it's all there, But what's interesting about his work are things like that, It's things you sort of miss every day. There's like high contrast shot of blinds. Mean not a lot to some people, but there's a thing I like about Ralph's work. I've seen some of his newer stuff, his colour stuff, and there's a shot where there's somebody walking down the stairs in a sort of corporate building or college or something, or some institution, and it just catches the leg and the hand dangling as the person walks behind the wall, and it's that almost glancing effect you get when you look at people and you're randomly looking around and you pick things out with people and you remember little spots, and that's almost what his photography's like. It's almost like that time you looked at something really quickly and caught a glimpse of something, and it's sort of that glimpse and moment he sort of turns into that photographic moment, and I so like it. And his obvious fascination with shapes. I mean, you can see like the swan shaped here. It could be quite sexual. It depends how you look at it. This again, the difference in form and shape, and light on shape, and it's just, I find it really interesting how he's using the design elements purely and not focusing on a subject matter, but he's seeing how things work together and letting the viewer make their mind up, which is really interesting. He does this a lot with erotica type style stuff. It's not heavy or heavy duty. It's quite very art based. I think in about 1970 he was really broke. I think he was he sold his cameras. What I know, he was literally on his backside, and I think he was shooting this sort of abstract stuff, and I don't think there was much room. There wasn't much room for it at the time. And then he published the Somnambulist, and that sort of landed him a little bit in terms of his abstract type work. And this is going on, juxtaposition of that, and that makes almost sexualizing the door handle, doesn't it? It's got this sort of like feminine quality about it, and obviously that sort of leads you into thinking about it. So yeah, he published the book. He then became recognised and started producing work and producing a lot of his own photography books under his label, Lustrum Press. I think he published Larry Clark's Tulsa, which I'm going to do this week, I think. I'm going to find it and pop it out. So, yeah, this looks like infrared, doesn't it? There's a beautiful quality about him. And there's a real dynamics with the shots. And I think I look at a lot of photographers, and I sometimes often see this element lacking in a lot of photography. The use of light and understanding how light works with shapes and how it can develop into three-dimensional aspects and how it can make your picture look three-dimensional. But sometimes I see photography and I don't see the other elements within that. And when you do, when it all comes together, I'm not just talking about household names, sort of like, Philip Jones Griffiths and Pete Hill, like Salgado. And I see just normal photographers like myself every day who do get it as well. And you don't have to be like Philip Jones Griffiths and them, that's what I'm saying. There is a majority of us who get it, who understand how it works together. And there's quite a lot of it out there which they don't really see it. Once you start seeing it form and shape and how light works, and how light works in particular, you start understanding how to tell a story and describe and construct narrative within the shots. This shot here, right, is a woman on her neck. It's bleached out. But if I do something, watch. I'm going to turn it around, okay? I'm going to drop it down. I'm going to cover that. It's almost like a sort of, it's almost like a Picasso. And that's that shot. Look at the difference now. It's almost like another body and a shape in that. It's beautiful, isn't it? I think the final output for Ralph is very important, and I think that's why he wanted to maintain control on his books, because getting the output right is very, very important. Okay, just the sort of nick there, and I'm looking for other stuff. When I'm looking at his work, I'm looking for other stuff. I don't know, Ralph. It's almost like a sort of surrealist shot from the 1933, isn't it? But I'm going to get you to look at this, right? Have a look at this closely, right? Let's just bring this down. If you look at the fork, and if you stare at it for a long time, it almost feels that you're looking at the back of it, whereas the actual shot is the front part, where the curve is. But if you look at it for long enough, it almost turns and reverses and feels like it's going that way. And again, it's like that other shot of the woman. It's incredible. It's very clever photography, but made to look so simple. And I think sometimes it puts people off when they look at stuff like this. They go, "Oh, it's just art." But there's more to it than that. There's more. I tell you what it is. There's consistency. There's consistency of the craft. There's somebody who's continually experimenting with shapes, is seeing what I said before, that fleeting moment, and trying immortalising that particular moment, and making it beautiful, making it work together, making it come together, almost like two hooded men, or Little Red Riding Hood, like looking at each other with no face, but you can see it's the sort of waistline of a dressed jacket or something like that. Again, that fascination with hard edges, really, I guess. I love this shot. This shot here, I love it. Isn't it beautiful? And I can see how this work has probably inspired other people. I've seen this sort of style coming out in other people's work as well, so I can see he's been an influence. You can't not be an influence with this sort of stuff. It's very well informed photography, made to look really easy. I'm just going to cover this because I want to, obviously that's the cover. I'm really interested in showing the cover. I love that almost sinister noir element to that. And it's just, that's a cover, obviously. I don't know who it is. There's a nude on this one. I don't want to go into it really. So again, and I like the fact, and I like what he's using, that the hard edges with the juxtaposition of the skin, so it's got soft and hard. Again, light, contrast, high contrast, shape, form, pattern. I missed a bit out there. There's a bit more nudity. Look at that. So simple. The sort of split as well. It's nicely presented, this. I really like this. I think it's great. I'm going to finish off again. I think it's almost like a violin or a cello or something like that. Again, with the hard edges, using shadow. I think, again, the feminine quality with the hard, the soft. It's just fantastic. So, there's some skill in this. There's something to learn from this. I've given you a little insight. I just wanted to open a few pages. I didn't want to profess, but I just wanted you to have a look at Ralph's work and maybe learn a little bit from it, learn a little bit about design, learn quite a lot about how light works, but more importantly, the post-production. Have control on the final output. Obviously, Ralph likes full control, and you know what, when you're doing these sort of images, you've got to get a message across using light and composition. I guess you have to be spot on, and I think for me this is a superb image to leave on. Okay, I mean, I could look at this for hours. We've got the face, we've got a standard background, we've got almost like rule of thirds. Look how he sculpted the shadow here to make it look like a second woman. It's like the outline of a woman next to a woman in a shadow. Superb, absolutely superb. And that's roughly it. I've left quite a bit out. Ralph Gibson, syntax. Go and check his work out. I learn a lot looking at stuff like this. I hope you do. I hope I can just give you a little insight into Ralph's work. His website, it's got an array of stuff on there, and I think a lot of his 60s and 70s work is magnificent. Thank you.